Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastep Jr.
Hello and welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show. My name is Ralph Eastep Jr. I'm so happy you joined us today. If you like our show, you can go download our show on the iTunes store on your podcast site. You can also go to Google Play. And if you're really interested in us, you can go to askralph.com and check us out. And you can see all the things that we offer our clients. Well, today I thought I'd take a little time and talk about the dreaded 1099-C. Now, if anybody's ever received one of these, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is something that will kind of take you by storm here, and you got to make sure you understand what it is. So let's start with a basic definition of what is a 1099-C cancellation of debt. The 1099-C is a document sent by a bank when they have canceled a debt. For instance, if you have negotiated with your credit card company to pay them a lesser amount than you owe them, the difference will be reported on this form. So let's say that, you had a bad time in the economy and you ran up some credit card debt and you said, I'm going to call over to Bank of America. I'll just use them as an example. And I've got this $5,000 credit card, but I just can't afford to pay it anymore. I'm not working and those sort of things. But you call them and they say, okay, Mr. Jones, we're feeling really generous today. So if you can pay us $2,000, we'll wipe out that $4,000 debt. And you go, oh, that's fantastic. I only have to pay $2,000 and $4,000 goes away. And you do that and, they wipe it out and, Then all of a sudden at the end of the year, the beginning of January, you get this 1099-C in the mail from Bank of America and it says discharge of debt, $2,000. Well, that's a little gift they didn't tell you about at the time. So what do you do with that? Well, the form that you get applies only to cancel debt of only $600 or more. And that applies whether the debt is canceled or forgiven, which is really the same thing. The IRS defines canceled debt as if your debt is forgiven or discharged for less than the full amount you owe, the debt is considered canceled in the amount that you don't have to pay. It's basically money you've earned because you haven't had to repay it. So it's money in your pocket, therefore it's taxable income. So if you've had canceled debt, expect to see this 1099-C arrive in your mail from the bank. And expect that you better include that on your tax return, because if you don't, what's going to happen is you are going to get a friendly little notice after the tax time, and probably next summer. And it's going to say, hey, you know what? You forgot about something. Now, there are some exceptions to when you don't have to report this 1099-C. Okay? We'll talk about those in a second, but let's talk about four of the most common reasons that debt is canceled. We talked about this one already. You settled a debt for less than what you originally owed, and the creditor picked up the remaining balance, known as debt forgiveness. This could include personal credit card debt that is canceled. Another time this happens is if you didn't pay on a debt for at least 3 years and there was no collection activity on that debt for the past year. So what we would call in the trade a charge-off. So basically, let's use that same scenario. You got this Bank of America credit card. And you say, look, I'm just going to hide. I'm not going to pay it. And they'll forget about me after a while. Well, guess what? You might stop getting notice and all that, but guess what you're going to get? You're going to get that dreaded 1099-C that says, oh, Mr. Jones, glad we could do business with you. Well, here's a $4,000 cancellation of debt. Another way that this happens, your home was foreclosed on and your deficiency, that's the difference between what was owed and the value of the home, was either forgiven or you haven't paid it. That's a big deal now when we had this, this housing crisis. A lot of people got these 1099-Cs because of their homes being foreclosed on. And of course, then there's the other thing with the home, and that's a short sale. And that's where you made a deal with your lender to pay less than it was owed. So again, you're back in that same position. Now, on box 6 of the 1099-C form, if you don't have one in front of you, I understand that, but just take my word for it. Box 6 shows the code that explains why the lender sent it. And there's an IRS publication, number 4681, which breaks down the code as follows. It could be an A would be bankruptcy, or B, other judicial debt relief, C, statute of limitations or expiration of deficiency period, D, foreclosure election. E could be debt relief from probate or similar proceeding, F, by agreement, which is going to be very common if you make out one of those credit card agreements, G, decision or policy to discontinue collection, or H, other actual discharge before identifiable debt. So here's the thing. Receiving a 1099-C doesn't necessarily mean that your debt is paid or canceled. That depends on why you received the 1099-C in the first place. If you've received it because you settled your debt, then your debt is resolved. However, If you received it because you haven't made any payments on the debt for 3 years and the debt collector hasn't tried to collect in the past year, your debt is not in the clear and you may still owe the lender money. However, if the debt hasn't been canceled, you don't yet need to consider it as part of your taxable income. So that's the deal. So if they haven't canceled the debt, then they shouldn't be sending you a 1099-C, first of all. But if they do and they're still trying to collect on it, that is not income to you. So what do you do if you get one of these 1099-Cs? First thing, don't panic. Not always are these things considered income. So let's talk about some of the exclusions. One of the biggest exclusions is canceled debt when you were insolvent. I say this to clients all the time, like, what does that mean? I said, you are broke. I remember the old Three Stooges, where they had, they would put them in jail because they didn't have any money. If you can prove a debt was canceled due to insolvency or that you're being broke, you don't have to include that canceled debt as income or pay taxes on it. Now, that being said, you still need to show it on the tax return, but you need to mark it that it's being insolvent. So what does insolvency mean? You have more liabilities than assets. Basically, you owe more than what you own. There's another form you have to fill out to do that. Now, the other way that you can exclude this from your income, if it's debts discharged due to bankruptcy aren't reported as income either. So if you've been through a bankruptcy, somebody sends you a 1099-C, again, put it on your return, but you exclude it as income because of it's a bankruptcy. And additionally, any student loans that are forgiven after you have worked in your field for a specific amount of time also don't include any of the canceled debt as income. Now, if you've been in a bankruptcy case, you can work with your bankruptcy attorney to get that information. You need to understand that it's not like that is a tax cost. It becomes income to you. Okay. So let's say you have that $2,000 debt cancellation and you're in the 10% tax bracket. What's going to cost you $200? So if they've forgiven $2,000 and you only have to pay $200, it's still a good deal. So don't lose sleep over that. It's not a terrible thing. Here's one thing you do need to know. As long as the debt has not been paid or canceled, there's no statute of limitations on when a lender has to submit a 1099-C. But if the lender files a 1099-C with 1099-C with the IRS, however, they have until January 31st to have it in your mailbox. So if you haven't received it, then you need to report it. So you can receive this at any time. The lender isn't required to file a 1099-C if it still wants to collect or notify you it is intended to stop trying to collect it. So basically, they can continue to collect indefinitely. Then they might just decide, we're going to try to see if old Mr. Smith is going to pay us. And if you think you got one by mistake, the first thing you want to do is contact the issuer and ask them to make the necessary corrections. So if it's not correct, don't assume that it's right. Make sure that it's correct. But, in most cases, you're going to have an idea about this. You could have worked with a debt resolution company or something like that. And, if you don't know how to handle it, contact somebody like myself and we'll definitely be able to help you out with that. But just make sure that, if you get one of these, you don't just ignore it. Ignoring it will not make it go away and you'll just get a friendly notice from the IRS later.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.